Welcome to Find Your Strong, the podcast for anyone ready to ditch diet culture and find a kinder way to care for themselves.
We're Christine and Ella. Ella is a nutritionist.
And Christine is a personal trainer.
And we're both also intuitive eating counsellors and ready to be your guides through this wild and wonderful non-diet space.
Every week we talk real-life well-being with experts, guests and each other, all with compassion and zero judgment.
So if you're ready, let's find your strong. Welcome, Doris. How are you?
Hello, Christine. Hello, Ella. I'm great. I'm
Hi.
just happy to be here.
Well, we were speaking just before we hit record about how we love a tangent, and we tend to go off on various tangents, don't we, Ella?
Oh, we do. We're very good at tangents.
But we are very keen to talk to you. I've been listening to your podcast as a way to improve my German, which used to be very good at one stage, not at the moment. But I listened to an episode about stress, and it's been something that I've been doing a lot of work around recently in terms of mind body, how stress impacts what's going on in the body. Because I struggle with IBS and I've got various kind of chronic conditions, which I'm wondering, maybe I can get a hang of those if I just somehow manage my stress a little bit differently. So I know, obviously we want to hear about all of your stories and how you came to be in this space, but that's a topic that I thought would be really interesting to talk about, Ella. What do you think?
I think it's super important because it comes up with literally every client.
Absolutely.
I always have in my intake form, I always ask, how stressed do you feel on a scale of whatever? And the majority feel very, very stressed. And that could be because of, their coping skills or the general situation they find themselves in. Obviously, they get to me because they struggle with eating, which can be stressful in and of itself. So, yeah, we'd love to sort of quiz you a little bit about how you integrate stress reduction in your practice, maybe what kind of things you've got to share about that.
Yeah, and also completely personally, if you don't mind, because it'd be really interesting. You present as very calm, which I don't. And I'd love to know, is that how you feel? Do you feel quite regulated? Obviously, nobody's ever regulated all the time, but do you have techniques that you can go to, or have you got... So anyway, I'll stop talking. Doris, over to you.
Here I am. Yeah, that's a great question because I feel like in general I would describe myself as a calm person, but I'm also not all the time. And there is a little bit probably sort of a difference between the professional and the personal me. But the good thing about my work is that as a trauma-informed yoga teacher, that I do something that sort of calms me down. And so that's very handy. So I often have it. I mean, I had it just 2 days ago when I had my Monday evening class that I just didn't really have a great day, and I just sort of felt like a day that could have just gone differently. And then after the yoga practice, I was just sort of felt really recharged and felt different. And that's often something that happens. So that's sort of a lucky life choice in a way. But I also am a big sigher, so I'm a great believer in sigh. So it can sometimes be a bit sort of confusing for people because when you sigh, sometimes people think you're sort of, it's like a silent complaint or something like that. And I've had sort of interactions where people felt like I was sort of sighing at something that sort of bothered me. But that's something that I do that I feel like just regulates me a lot because, when we exhale, it triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for relaxation. So that's just something that I do, just a big fan of the old exhalation, which is something that everyone can do in their space.
I love that. And I remember that I took a few yoga classes with Doris over the last year, and yeah, the sighing was strange at first, but when I surrendered to it, I really realized how it brought me right down and how lovely it was to just let go, but do it with a sound, just exhaling with a sound. It was so different, but really actually quite different from just breathing. So yeah, I loved that. I really, really enjoyed that.
It's,
Great.
it's something that I always start my classes with. Take a couple of breaths, so in through the nose, and then I always sigh, because it's, for me, that it just releases something. It's exactly that, and it's interesting. It's only something that I've really come across very recently.
Yeah.
But when on that note, when you had a class on Monday, how did you, before the class, gather yourself? So if you're feeling quite just not in a good space, how did you sort of speak to yourself kindly before the class? Do you just go into it? How do you prepare when you're not feeling great?
I think just the stepping on my mat and in my space is kind of this. I automatically focus on, like, I'm turning into sort of professional mode, and so my focus shifts, and I just I think my just creating this mat as a safe space is already sort of, I step into this safe space. So just whenever I'm on my mat, this is kind of, I know something good is going to happen, or just I'm sort of, the focus is a little bit on feeling and not so much on thinking. And I think it just sort of this transition, when I set up, and you have these kind of rituals that you go through, and I think just these kind of is this slow transition that I don't actively do something about it, but it sort of happens as I go along. But there are times when I have a workshop in the evening and I get anxious a lot, and I just then lie down and sort of say an affirmation to myself. And so that's something that helps if I don't really have a practice to go to.
I love the mat being a safe space.
No, I love that.
That's really lovely, actually. And I'm wondering, so if this is obviously your safe space, you get on the mat, you put your professional hat on, whatever, but also this is a space where actually I'm safe here. How do you deal with people for whom the mat might not be safe? Because I personally find yoga, it can be really emotional depending on what postures you do. When you do hip openers or throat openers, I know that for some people that can bring up a huge amount of emotion and trigger them into like feeling really intense feelings. How do you, with the trauma informed lens, how do you deal with that, and how do you make sure that the mat is a safe space for all the people that take your classes as well?
I think for this, the home practice really sort of lends itself, because there's no one else around you.
Yeah.
I see the challenge in a sort of offline yoga practice where someone might be, just a few inches away from you,
Yeah.
which I really, really don't like. I like to have
Yeah.
my personal space as well.
Yeah.
So I think that can be challenging, but I think you can, then there is practices in the offline space to then, decide how many people you want in your class, or just setting things up. But I think in general, starting, and this is something that's so important to me, having this, being in this sort of non-judgmental space, and guiding people through it, that there's no goal to achieve. There is no way that something needs to, or a practice needs to look like, or just really understanding that you're in charge, and that you can say, this is how deep I want to go, or this is, I'm stopping at this point. Or as you said, Ella, if an emotion is arising, maybe I want to step out of it, or maybe I can just observe it, to just give people agency, which is such an important thing in the trauma-informed space, to decide what they want to do. And the online space is really great for that, because they can stop at any time. You don't have to deal with the social element of leaving a practice. So I think just really working in it, this can be a long process, because we don't live in a world that is sort of judgment free. But to just understand that, even some days your balance is a little bit wobbly, all part of the practice, not going into this is good and this is bad. So just neutralizing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think COVID has been, one of the things that has been nice that COVID has brought, which very few things, but is the online space and the growth of the online space, because I think a lot of people suddenly have found movement that they enjoy, and an access point that works for them, so they're actually able to work in that safe space from their own home, and not feeling judged, and have, being able to set up your own space, and being able to, there's a certain performative element when you're in a class. you don't just act as if you would at home. So I love an online class because when I'm actually in a class, I act slightly differently, even though I'm trying not to. You just do because you're aware of other people and I'm not really aware of where I'm at in the session. So I find it's been a lovely thing, sort of a hangover from COVID, but it's continued for a lot of people, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think also then you don't go into peer pressure as much, which is really important for injury prevention, right? That you don't push yourself, or that you can,
Yeah.
I mean, you can let out a fart, because that happens a lot in yoga. And it's just, you just sort of do whatever you want, and then that's it. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it's good. It's good to normalize the farts, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
love it. Needs to come out. It's just
Yeah.
going to cause havoc if it stays in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a
But,
really good point, actually, with the online stuff too. What I've noticed since I've been doing more online classes is that I listen more to my body, and I stop when actually things are too difficult. Whereas if I'm a show off, when I'm in my boot camp class or when I'm doing a class, I'm like, look at how bendy I am. And I'm not, but I want to show off, and not necessarily consciously, but it's one of those things. It's the competitiveness. But when you do it online, you might not even have your camera on. It feels a lot safer to really just tune in and to listen to what's going on.
Absolutely.
What I wanted to ask is maybe it's from a slightly different angle. It's for me when emotions are particularly raw or difficult, I want to run away, and so I want to run, or I want to box, or I want to jump up and down, or do something high impact, intense, rather than slow down and get into my body. And at what point do you need to do both, or is for some people is it you go between them, don't you? Sometimes you need to activate, sometimes you need to rest, and so sometimes your nervous system needs that stimulation and sometimes it doesn't. How do you find that personally? How do you navigate that?
That's interesting, because it's something that I hear from a lot of people, that they struggle with the stillness that might come with yoga. And I think, as you said, it's a great sort of way to release stress, to, do some activity, because if we look at the fight and flight modes, that are sort of two responses of stress, they both are physically active. And so if you are physically active, like you're running or you're fighting, it can sort of release all that sort of build up energy from the body. And that's why a lot of people enjoy maybe a more dynamic yoga class, like vinyasa, where they move and then at the end they can rest a little bit. So that sort of, a lot of people find resting at the end easier than sort of resting in the beginning, or meditating in the beginning. And I think it's sort of, if that's your way to find into it, that's great, because I think to sit those people down and say, you rest for 10 minutes, don't do anything, that would be way too much. They would sort of be really anxious. And but I think just finding that sort of way into a bit more stillness is really good. But I think often you maybe need or maybe quite beneficial, a little bit of the opposite, to have, if you feel like you're a very active person, to rest a lot, whereas I'm a bit more of a restful person. So I need to be a bit more sort of force myself to be active a little bit more. So I feel like just sort of find the opposite piece, but at the same time, everything is valid. And I find that often we talk quite negatively about our comfort zone, but the comfort zone is so important as well, right? Because this is our safe space. This is where we feel comfortable. So some days you might be able to challenge this more than on others, and I think that's perfectly fine as well.
Oh, I do love that, because it's such a society we live in, is you've got to do more, you've got to be more, you've got to be better, you've got to keep growing, and I've always thought I can't stay in my comfort zone. I've always got to be pushing beyond it and pushing out of it. And it's lovely to think actually sometimes it's okay to stay in my comfort zone. That's absolutely fine, and not to judge myself for, especially when you're having a hard time in other parts of your life. That's really serves you, doesn't it?
Yeah, we speak to ourselves often so harshly, and we're so strict, we're so critical with ourselves. And to me, the comfort zone, always I envision it as this, I have this corner on my sofa that I can look at right now, and it's sort of this sort of space where I am with a little blanket, and this is my physical comfort zone, but also I envision my sort of mental comfort zone that way. And to not have this sort of cozy little space where you can just be, that would be really feel like something's missing.
How do you feel about that, Ella? Are you a person you find it hard to go into stillness, or how do you?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I think I used to find it harder because to me, stillness symbolized basically not being productive and not doing anything. But I've got a lot better with that now because I'm just tuning in a little bit more regularly and listening more to what do I actually need right now? Is it active or is it not? But I love that, the idea of having lots of different tools in your toolkit. So when you need stillness and when you need that kind of that kind of more quiet and more internal kind of work, then if you have that available to you. Likewise, if you do need to let out some energy and you want to box a punch bag or whatever it is, or run or do a HIIT workout, that you have options. I think options are really important because you can't just assume that one size will fit everybody. Having lots of different tools in your toolkit, I think is just really important. I think my worry is that when you do struggle with anything traumatic, whether that is like a bunch of small traumas that have accumulated or large trauma, that not a lot of people will be able to guide you through that and give you something that might not be even more triggering. So I'm really keen on hearing a little bit about how trauma-informed practice is different. What, like in a very sort of literal way, what do you do that's different from other yoga teachers that will hold that safe space for people? Because if you just go to any kind of yoga class, I wouldn't be necessarily sure that is a safe space for everybody, because it's just not, yoga's not yoga and not every teacher is the same. So can you tell us a little bit about how that would look different when people come to your class?
Absolutely. Yeah, I get the ick in a lot of yoga classes. So there's a few things to look at, or a few sort of practices. For one, consent is really, really important. So this is more about offline practices. So when I do have my offline practices or offline classes, I have little consent cards that are face down, so they are sort of on no. So I do hands-on assist. I don't. So there's a lot like in yoga where people get pushed into a certain pose, which I don't do. I just place my hands on someone's back, or maybe if I see a really high shoulder, but I just place it. I don't push anyone because it also gives me. So I have quite a lot of issues with it. But anyway, so I have these consent cards that are on no. And if I explain what they're about and I tell people, if it's a clear yes, turn them over. If it's a maybe, I would leave it at a no, and they can play around with it, and it's nothing personal. So I set the space. So, on consent, setting space. So making also sort of giving people, guiding them a little bit into it, saying, what I'm doing on this mat, it's an invitation that you can do. If you choose not to follow, if you need a break, I'm not going to question it. So just that is really, really important. I think just setting the space, because a lot of people, like you said, they perform, or they don't know, they feel like they need to follow, and so on and so forth. And this still happens, and I see it still. And I'm trying to work against it, but at least sort of from my point of view, or from my sort of teacher's perspective, even though, you often hear there isn't a hierarchy, but there is a hierarchy. I mean, it's sort of an non-outspoken one, but it's sort of, it's still, I know what I do, most people will follow. So just being aware of your role, consent cards. Just, I think people sometimes say, if you don't want to be touched, just say no. This is not a sort of very low effort one. Like, you just need to, it needs to be non-verbal, it needs to be really clear consent. So I think that can apply to any practice where there is physical contact. And you can still, even if someone says no, I think you can still do whatever you practice. You just don't need to physically touch them, because some people just, for whatever reason, they don't want to, and that's okay. Also not questioning that. So that's one. And the other one is just agency, as I spoke about. So also telling people that, you know, they can choose to do certain things and not do certain things. So this is such a crucial part, because when you look at trauma, people didn't have agency because it's something that happens to you.
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice in it, right?
Yep.
So just giving them the choice, which I think can sometimes, I have it with people where they're sometimes a bit confused of what that means, and you know. But this is sometimes also a practice that takes a little bit of time to understand, because you come from a different mindset into this, and suddenly it's trauma informed and you're a bit confused. So that's really important. And even though there might not be people that have any trauma, we just sort of think that people have a trauma and sort of try to help everyone or just be available for everyone. And then the other part is the nervous system, autonomous nervous system. That's the one that we sort of try to regulate in a trauma-informed practice. So that can be because we might feel quite anxious, or we might be depressed, or for whatever reason, we're not really regulated. So we get little spikes that go sort of into overregulation or underregulation. And then we have practices to help people come into a more sort of regulated state. And these might all be practices that you don't even realize that someone's doing, but they're sort of helping you. So one thing is grounding. So that's just sort of just getting in contact with something that is on the ground. So if we're sitting, it could be the soles of your feet. If you're sitting in a cross-legged seat, it could be the sit bones. When you're lying down, it can be your backside. So this is also something that I do sometimes with clients just in a coaching session to sort of arrive, right? So this can be something that you can do literally anywhere. Other practices is just self-touch. If people are comfortable with it, placing hands on your body or giving yourself a hug, sort of touching yourself, because it brings you back in the moment, because we're often, you know, sort of thinking about this future event or this past event or what happened. And all these practices bring you back into the moment, which is sort of what is really helpful when we look at trauma-informed practices. Any kind of swaying movement. If you look at sort of a distressed child, what do? You hug it, you sort of take it in your arms and you sway it. And that's something that worked with your sort of nervous system at the time, and it still works now. And it's great if you have a loved one that can sort of hug you and do all that to you. But I always say there's always one person that's always available, and that's you. So you can do these practices to you. It might be strange to hug yourself and to sway from side to side, but we sometimes do it when sort of unconsciously. So to do it consciously can be really powerful. But I also implement that if we're dangling, you know, standing forward fold, you can dangle around. So I'm just, you know, wherever you want to dangle, you're more than welcome to dangle. What else? Just orienting. So that's often also a bit an ick of mine. People tell you to close your eyes, which just you need to feel really safe to close your eyes, because, you know, you're looking at exits, there's many things. So just giving people an invitation to open them or close them, whatever they want to do. And then if they open them after meditation, for example, to just look around and maybe name things that you see, to just once again be present in the moment. So just these are a few things that we do, and all of them presenting them as an invitation that someone can choose to accept or choose to decline. But and both are equally, you know, to each other, or equal to each other. So not sort of saying, I remember this is something that the teacher that I trained with said. She said to those people, thank you for sharing and thank you for not sharing, because, you know, you don't want to sort of treat this as a better sort of response to the other. So yeah, those are some things that sort of came to my mind.
There's this is fascinating to me. I did a course in trauma-informed Pilates, and I think Pilates is quite different in many ways, but obviously has similarities. But I trained in Pilates during COVID, so there was no hands-on. We did not do any hands-on, and that's how I trained. So before that, I was aerobics and kind of personal training, so it was quite different. But in the actual Pilates classes, I never learned how to do the hands-on approach. So I have kind of stayed a bit back from it, just because, you know, people tend to feel less comfortable. I don't know, I just tend to shy away from it. I'll go over and kind of give somebody a serve. I'll say, oh, if you want to put your hand on your knee, you know, I won't actually go and touch them in a class. And I know that's the other extreme. But I do find that in a class, some people say, oh, yeah, it's fine. And always been something that I've wondered about with consent. And I love the way that you do that, because people will go, oh, no, it's fine, but they don't mean it. And the idea that you don't have to, you're opting out unless you turn it over, that's a lovely thing, because you're not making you don't need to move at all, you don't need to do anything, and you'll know that actually this person doesn't want that assist. I absolutely love that approach. And one thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know if cueing is a thing in yoga as much in terms of the trauma-informed approach, but we've got a lot of exercises in the Pilates repertoire which are quite triggering to people. And the cueing of these exercises, and we had one which was a spine stretch forward. I often talk about this. And the cueing was, imagine somebody's holding you back while somebody else is pulling you forward. So somebody's got their arm around your waist, pulling you back. And that in itself could be really traumatizing for somebody. So, the cue I talk about a beach ball, or imagine folding over a beach ball, or making it just a cue that's going to be visual perhaps, but isn't going to just cause any distress to people. It's quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are those cues. There's some weird ones out there, like sort of, hug your ribs in and whatnot. It's like, how do you do that? Like,
Yeah.
I think just in general, like that, I've never heard that, but it gave me a little goosebump, that kind of someone else holding you back. I just,
Precisely.
yeah, I just always
Yeah.
do cues that, I feel like are very accessible, I hope, like
Yeah.
if we do a side bend, let's just think of, imagine you reaching something from a shelf or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just in general, making these cues not sort of problematic and just very clear as well, because not in this sort of more meta level of whatever, hugging something in that you can't hug in. And I find that's just not very accessible to people anyway.
What do you think, coming from the non-teacher lens?
Yeah, I find that really interesting, and I was going to comment on exactly what you commented on with the cards, because I think that's such a good idea. It's a passive. You don't have to make an active decision to say no to something that you don't want. It's almost like someone's made the decision for you, because it can feel really awkward if you're the only one who doesn't want to be touched or doesn't want to be corrected or moved in a different position. So you often sort of just do it because, you don't want to make a fuss or whatever it is. So I think it's a brilliant idea. I've never seen that in any class that I've attended in person. And yeah, the queuing is a funny one, and I think I probably have only just become more aware of it since I've worked for Body Image Fitness and sort of done different classes, that it's, for some people it can be really difficult to hear stuff, and I've done that when I've done guided meditations with breath work, where you breathe into your belly. And I've had feedback from some of my clients who said, I found that really challenging because I hate my belly. I don't want to think about my belly, and I certainly don't want to expand it because I think it's awful as it is. So I'm always conscious of that now when I guide people through stuff like that. If it's in a one-on-one, I can talk about it, but if it's in a group setting, you really have to be careful, because you just don't know what someone's background is, what someone's going through, what someone is dealing with. So yeah, I think it's really important to have
Absolutely.
those.
I think it always also be open to, change your approach is
Yeah.
really important, because if you
Yes.
just go down this route and say, this is how I always did it, and then, gathering new information, thinking, oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but I can
Yeah.
certainly see it, and just seeing this as an opportunity rather than, sort of something negative, which can happen a lot. But because,
Yeah.
like, for example, these consent cards, I handmade them with 2 types of paper and wrote on them. Like, it's just, I
More
spent
difficult. Yeah.
spend €3 on this,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can get really nice ones.
Yeah.
But if you just, everything can be done on a low budget or in a very kind of easy way.
Yeah. You just have to have the idea, don't you? You have to come up with it. You have to think about it a little bit, which you clearly have.
Yeah.
And I think it's also sort of making sure that if you're going to say, good job, you don't go, good job, one person. You don't say, oh, you're not doing that right, too. You very much, if you're going to say good job or well done, you either say it to everybody, or you don't want to single people out in that way. I find that for myself, if I go to a class, I find that quite upsetting if somebody sort of goes, "Oh, Christine, you're not doing that right." I find that there's a way to do these things. And as you say, I'm always learning. And when I started in fitness, I used to say, this is the easy option. This is the harder option. This is, and now I don't use that terminology at all, because it's nothing to do with that. They're all options, and you choose the one that works best for your body on any given day. And it's because we're all completely different. But that took years for me to actually learn.
Can I just say, I absolutely love that about your classes. And when I did the first class with you, my brain was going, well, which is the hardest then? I want to do the hardest, because that's how I apparently do exercise anyway. But yeah, so I was just looking for which one is the hardest, but you would just not give it away. You were just like, no, just these are the options, you pick.
Yeah.
And I love that. I really got used to that idea, and it makes you feel safer, because you don't feel like you have to compete with everybody. You don't have to pick one option over another because it'll be better or worse, whatever it is.
But
So
it is also that thing. I'm sure that any movement is good movement. It is
Absolutely.
valid. It does not
Absolutely.
have to look this way, this way, this way. It's what works for you and your body. And I think and I know that that's how you teach as well, Doris, because I've heard great things about your class. I haven't actually done your class yet, which is ridiculous. But what I wanted to ask you about was talking about the non-diet space. So I think this all ties in together, but were you ever in the diet, not the diet space, but were you ever more immersed in the kind of, this will tone your body, do this, were you ever in that space, or did you always approach it from a kind of a non-diet lens?
So as a dietitian, I have, as someone would say, a degree in diet culture. So there's that. But I think the yoga space, I came to it from a non-diet space, and actually looking back, the teacher that I had for my first training, we didn't have the best relationship, but she was actually in a larger body. And that was never, luckily, it was more of a spiritual yoga practice, so we didn't have this kind of toning and sculpting and all that kind of stuff. Luckily wasn't taught, and so it's never, and it's also nothing that I ever really sort of was interested in when I did my sort of random trying a practice here and there kind of before doing my training. So luckily for the physical part of it, it's never, even though I wasn't consciously in a no diet space at the time, luckily it just never touched yoga. Oh, sorry, there is someone drilling.
Can't hear it.
Luckily, I was never in a sort of diet space for that.
That's great to have, not gone in with that and then had to pivot. You kind of just came in with that. I really enjoy that. But in your experience with colleagues, have you seen that that's not usual in the world that you kind of teach in, or is it a bit of a mixed bag? Because definitely over here, it's very much swimming against the tide. So most Pilates teachers will talk about toning, and you'll get in 8 weeks, I'll show you a different body. Let's work those abs. It's summer coming up. Let's tone those. That's the language that not all teachers, but a number, certainly it's quite a commonplace.
I think in the offline space, it's not so present, but I think it shows itself in different ways when you look at, what the teachers look like and stuff. So is it inclusive? Not really.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say, I think maybe because I'm in Berlin, it's a bit of a different space, but I'm sure you can find your summer body sculpt program and whatnot. But I think this is maybe more of a Pilates than a yoga thing. Maybe yoga is a lot of the times a bit separate from it, but I would say in the online space for sure. If you look at YouTube, and I think, when you're a freelancer and you look at SEO and and you do your keyword research, like yoga for weight loss is one of the top things. Or if you just use words like sculpting and toning and all those stupid words, I'm sure my hits would, go higher, but I don't want to do that.
No.
And I'd rather be in this small little bubble there than in the big bubble, sort of working for the bad guy.
Mm.
And that's, we talk about that a lot. It would be a lot easier sell if, because I have so many clients coming to me going, so my goal is I want to lose this amount of weight and tone up before summer. And I'm like, I'm not really your person, You're not going to enjoy, because that's not what the goals that I set. And, I think there's never a judgment there, because I was in that space for many, many years. But it's more that, I'm telling people, if you're in it for life, you can get stronger for life. It's less sexy, obviously more sustainable and better for you. But it's not that 6-week transformation. It's not that immediate, instant gratification. I'm going to look completely different. And because that's not something I think fitness instructors, yoga teachers, Pilates instructors should ever guarantee, because you can't. Sorry, soapbox.
Yeah. No, but it's so true, isn't it? It's that cell, isn't it? That people often just exercise and move their bodies because they want to control their bodies, or they want to lose weight. If you ask someone, would you stop exercising if it hadn't got any effect on your body? I think the majority of people would probably say, no, yeah, probably, I wouldn't do anything. So I think it's really hard to swim against that. And there's the term yoga body isn't there without a reason. There's, that's been coined by those people in that industry who are selling something that, as Christine said, is just not achievable for the majority of people. And that's really toxic. It's really damaging.
Yeah, or just simply false information to say
Yeah.
that you can tone your, have a slim waist with that movement. It's just,
it's ridiculous.
That's wrong. I mean, morally, but also wrong.
Factually, yeah, exactly.
And you can't spot reduce fat loss. You can't kind of go, oh, I want to lose weight here and here. But if you go on the internet, it suggests you can. Absolutely, you can. Just do this exercise 40 times.
Yeah.
Like, no. I've got a question, and you can absolutely say, no, I don't want to answer that. But from a personal point of view, have you always had, how has your body image always been fairly positive? Has it been something you haven't really spent a long time thinking about? Or is it something that you've worked on? Or how would you feel about that, Doris?
I would say my body image journey was maybe a bit different, because as a sort of 10, 12-year-old, I was diagnosed with vitiligo, which is an autoimmune disease where you have parts of your skin that don't have a pigment, so they're sort of white. And that was, so I was, for most of my life, I was in a small body, and so that part of the body wasn't really my problem or my issue, but more sort of my skin was kind of something that I dealt with. And there was a time, and that was before all the social media, and now the representation is so much better, and I think it would have really helped me at the time. But I was sort of hiding my skin, so in the summer, long sleeve and long trousers, which I know that many people can relate to that, sort of to hide. And the challenge with my skin condition is that it's unpredictable. So currently it's increasing, but it can stop, it can go back, you just don't know. And it's also a bit of a seasonal issue, because in the winter you don't really see it because my skin is light, so there's not really much of a contrast, but my skin tends to tan quite quickly. So now, even now in sort of end of April, you can see in my hands the contrast. And so that's something that I struggle with. I also have a bit more sort of body hair and darker hair, so that's sort of something that I struggled with, and it was probably took a quite a long time to come to terms with this. But also at some point, that was as a teenager, where I didn't hide as much, but I still wouldn't show something like my shoulders, but maybe show my elbows. So I would slowly, gradually start to show my body more. And now, I wouldn't say I'm at 100%, but I'm definitely way more comfortable with it, and just choose to wear what I want. And now kind of not proud of my vitiligo, because it's nothing that I did anything for, but sort of just neutral about it, really. And I've also, I'm not in an as small body anymore. I wouldn't say I'm in a large body. I'm maybe sort of in the mid-size-ish area. And sort of, so that's a little of a more new body for me to say. But I feel like I also know that I'm mentally and physically the healthiest I've ever been. So that's just something that I drew a conclusion from, that, you know, this is who I am. My body might change, my skin might change, but I know that, you know, I have a good relationship with it, a good relationship with food, and that's really all that matters to me.
Wow. That's such a wonderful place to be in, because I think so many people struggle with that. And what what you highlighted for me is that, you know, we often obviously talk about, because we're in the non-diet space, we talk about weight as the thing, but it's actually highlighted that it doesn't have to just be about weight. It's just,
Yeah.
as soon as there's something different that you feel like you have to hide, because it might cause people to ask questions, or it might just feel uncomfortable. And yeah, it's interesting how that has taken you quite a while to get to a place where actually now I'm fine, I'm cool with who I am and what I look like. That's a lovely place to be.
And I think it is just that thing. That's a really good point, Ella. I think even if you do get to the point, I've always sort of said this, if you get your dream body in inverted commas, what happens then? What's next? And you know, in my experience, it jumped for me. I was like, okay, yay. Oh, I've got the weight that I wanted. Now, oh no, look at my nose, or look at my, you know, look at my hair's awful, or oh, I need to. So if you don't work on it, it just jumps. Do you know what I mean? It's, you can't get away from it. I think by losing the weight, it's not going to suddenly give you confidence if you
Yeah.
don't have that confidence to begin with.
Yeah, your
And I
body's
think
not the problem, right? It's
you're
this, you're looking for
precisely,
something. Yeah.
yeah, and it's, which is a hard lesson to learn. I think it, as you're saying, Doris, it takes quite a long time to come to terms with yourself in all your glory. You know, it's, and know that this is your body, your home, your space, and it's, that takes a while.
Mm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard because it's so normalized to dislike your body or hair, whatever, you know, yourself, that it's just, you don't realize that it's actually not healthy and not normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's normalized to hate things about you, because it gives you something to talk about. And you know, we feel like if we like everything about us, it makes us conceited, or it makes us, you know, just weird. So,
Yeah.
you know, what's it, normative discontent is a big thing when it comes to body image, right?
Hmm.
Oh, Ella, we have work to do, don't we?
Well, we have,
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
definitely.
Doris, if we wanted to work with you, what is the best way for us to find you? And do you have anything coming up? Any offers, anything, any workshops, anything?
Mm, so you can just find me on my website. You might be confused because everything I do is in German, but as you know, I do speak English, so I can also do one-on-one in German. But I did at the beginning, I was working more in English, and then I sort of niched down into German. So most of my stuff, my group stuff, is in German as well. So a one-on-one would probably, it's sort of the best thing that I could offer an English speaker. If there's a German speaker, they can, you know, join the online yoga studio that I have, or if they're in Berlin, we can we can exchange contacts. But I don't have anything at the moment coming up, and so just going through the year.
Why is your English so good?
Because I'm just incredibly smart.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Good
No,
answer.
I am. I think I was always a bit sort of interested in languages, and maybe had a bit of a sort of it just came easy to me, and my partner's actually English, so that's why I, you know, have maybe a tint of a British accent.
What
It was such a running joke when I lived in Germany for a couple of years, but every German person, just as soon as they heard any accent from me, started speaking English to me, and we're just beautiful English. Just we're like, what is going on? Because that is not the situation in this country, is it, Ella?
No, the Germans love speaking English though. I even hear my brother and my dad sometimes talk English to my children. I said, no, they need to speak German with you. That's the whole point.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's very strange, but yeah, I think the Germans and the Dutch and the Austrians, we all learn English from a young age, and I think it's just, yeah, part of growing up these days.
Yeah, so if you want to practice your German, go seek out Doris.
Yeah.
Or if you otherwise have a lovely one-to-one with her, because she
Yeah.
is fabulous. But Doris, thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And as always, we've run way over time because it was just too interesting.
Always is. Yeah, we'll put all of your details in the show notes, so that people can get in touch and follow you on Instagram, and yeah, just check out what you do. And I can personally highly recommend your classes. They are amazing. So yeah, I'd really love them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks, Doris.
Thank you.